Are we recording? We're recording. Holy shit. I had to like pause for a second because I didn't see it. This is episode 41. Oh, of the Great Satan. We are both living up under the massive weight of the Great Satan that is American hegemony and political violence, patriarchy, etc. Right? Whatever you want to call it. God damn. Hey, my man. Oh shit. Oh, are you
Yo,
saying your real
what's up?
name? I didn't put that in the thing. You're at
You
Anchor.
can say I don't care. No, it's cool.
Say your real name.
I'm at Ainter Show. People call me Marcos. People, that's my name. I mean,
Hell yeah.
it's fine. The CIA knows about me. They're probably yeah.
Hell yeah.
I'm somewhere on the list. I'm somewhere on a list, not the list, but a list. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For sure.
Uh,
Uh,
no man. Philip.
Philip.
The the Prince, right? Is Prince
Oh
Philip? Is
yeah.
that the
Fuck
one?
that motherfucker.
Which one? I don't know. I don't know anything about any fucking royals. Like when people are like, oh, Prince, one of the princes died. I was like, which one? And I told my brother, like, Prince Harry. And
Yeah.
he's like, no, dude, he's young. And I'm like, they're all fucking vampires, but I don't
Yeah.
care.
They're timeless beings.
I don't care at all. Yeah. They're
Like they.
fueled purely by hate.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a.
But in some actual,
Go ahead.
in actual like horrible, sad news, the thing that fucks me up is DMX also passed away on the same day, which is like it's hard to celebrate a win when you take a L that hard. You know what I mean? Because I love DMX. Like I'm a huge.
Me too.
I had no idea how much DMX influenced my childhood until like thinking of him not being around. It did kind of set me back a little bit. It kind of made me feel like, damn. Usually I don't care about celebrity deaths, not like in a mean way, but it just I don't really have this hardcore connection that most people do to like celebrities. But DMX did make me like. It actually did bother me because like I can't imagine what my life would be like without this dude's music.
Same. Like,
right? Like
even so, like there's DMX is one of those artists where like at the time, right when it was popping, I was like, fuck yes. Then it was like ironically funny, and then it's like fuck yes again over the course of like 2 decades.
Yeah,
It's like
but he made music. He made music at a time when like, if you want to like tie it into the whole Great Satan narrative, the idea of like he made music at a time in like liberal hegemony,
yeah,
in the '90s where there was no way out. It didn't seem like Fukushima went and said he called it the end of, was it Fukushima? I don't
yeah.
remember.
Uh,
He said Fukuyama,
yeah,
Francis Fukuyama.
the end of history.
Fukuyama's,
Yeah.
I always say call him Fukushima on accident, but Fukuyama said he predicted and he called it the end of history, and that's what he was talking about, the like liberal hegemony that we had achieved.
Yeah,
And at the time, for everyone in the hood in the '90s, everyone who was in any kind of impoverished or like poor area or like rural area even just felt this pang of like, how is it the end of history? We just got to do this forever,
yeah,
right? And that's kind of what hip hop was this kind of like, bitch, we're not going to do this shit forever. And then I think it changed in the 2000s because it got commodified. It just it turned into big business, which is what happens. I think like that's yeah,
Money Guys made
yeah,
Super Poppy, and then also like they were doing it on the back of production, right? Like on the backs of the engineer, on the backs of the producer, right? So that's a great example. Yeah, it was commodified, not only commodified, but like co-opted into the capitalist system.
Yeah, and it went from music, not to be one of those old heads who's like, oh, music used to mean stuff back in the day, because music never actually, I try to explain to people that music is always about fucking, even if it's not, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's not, right? It's just, that's just the base line of what all music is about. But when I think about like the real tragedy in like hip hop around the 2000s and in the 1990s, the change was that it became this idea of like, it was hyper capitalism trying to sell hyper capitalism to like, I don't know, to anybody who would buy it. And a lot of people bought it without realizing what they were buying. Right. And then, that it's sold in this dream of like baller ideals. And like, today you can own a mansion. All you got to do is just fucking get a hustle. And it created inadvertently that whole hustle culture. Those like psychopaths who wake up on YouTube and they show, have you seen my hustle diaries? It's a
Oh,
dude who wakes up at 6 a.m. Have you seen those? They like wake up at 6 a.m., go for like a 5 mile jog, and then they're like, and then I start my job. And their job is like they're not even a computer programmer, they're a guy who sends emails, and they
right.
have a scam. They have a drop shipping scam that they're
It's
doing.
like not even a job. Yeah, it's like they,
Yeah.
hey, look, I figured out that there needs to be a middleman between this warehouse and these people that don't speak the language of this warehouse.
Yeah.
So what I did was I used Google Translate and make like 0.07 cents per Amazon order, and you make $1 billion,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
Which, look, there is something to be said for like there needs to be translators. That's a, that's a job. But
No, look, if you could do it
yeah,
in my mind, if you could do it without your parents' money, then more power to you.
right,
Right. That is my right, because one of the things that people don't talk about is these hustle culture guys and these hustle diary guys.
yeah,
They have professional editing. They have incredibly great cameras. They
yes,
drive really nice cars. They have really nice houses. They didn't have any of that shit before. Right. They didn't have any of that shit like
after,
from making that stuff.
yes,
Right. There's no journey into like how well, I made all this money and then I started realizing that I could monetize this even further. What
right,
happens is they're like, you know what? Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna buy a big ass camera. I'm gonna buy this thing. I'm gonna show them this one scam that I know how to do. I'm gonna
right,
make a YouTube career out of it.
right.
Right. that's
Then
that's
the
that's how
crazy
you
thing
do
is
it.
when you
That's
look at the numbers of those scams, it's like those. I'm not going to say scams because like existing under capitalism, like no labor that's not literally farming is a scam, right? So all tertiary sector labor, which is everything we do
yeah,
in
yeah,
America, like 99% of labor is tertiary
yeah.
sector. So yeah, what do you do?
I'm in marketing. I'm in marketing.
Yeah,
I work
hey,
I work as a social media like strategist for
yeah,
a big company.
yeah.
I am legitimately a scam artist.
It
Like
is
that's what I
yeah.
do.
So
I'm defrauding a major corporation, but still.
call what they do a grift, but not a scam, right? Like it's a job. The idea that it's like it takes hustle or whatever, it relies on the like the again the liberal hegemony. It relies on the individualism thing to say like get in there and put yourself
Mhm,
between these two points of commerce and then take your tiny
mhm,
little percent. Um, so it's
mhm.
not. I shouldn't say it's not work, right? But it's not work, right?
But I mean, I come from I posted about it a while ago, like on Twitter, which you should follow me on at
I
Angel
do.
Show. I'm gonna keep plugging myself because that's what I do. But yeah. Anyways,
Social media.
I posted about this a while ago about like yeah, my job, like my job evolution of how I came to become where I am today.
Yeah.
And it's not a straight line, right?
Oh,
I started out literally gleaning walnuts at my grandma's, like not my grandma's farm. She doesn't own a farm, but my grandma used to glean walnuts. My grandma was an immigrant, so she used to like pick apricots and glean walnuts. And in the summertime, because my mom was a cleaning lady and my dad was a janitor, and they both like just didn't have any kind of care for me in the summertime, so they would ship me to my grandma's house while they worked full time. And my grandma would also work full time, but her job was like, I guess they're a little bit more lax around brown kids working in like the Central Valley. Like they don't care how old you are. If you're brown enough, you could just get a job, which
yeah.
is what is essentially what happened to me. So I was like, 11, 12, like gleaning walnuts, picking apricots, doing all that shit. And eventually from there, I think I started working really early, like 15, and I've had every job under the sun. I was a cashier for a long time. I was a launderer. I used to do like laundry for people. I was a chef for a long time. And just like through purely coincidence and meeting the right people, I accidentally found myself into like the Silicon Valley office culture where I'm like now ingratiated and I'm part of it.
Yeah.
And two things that stick out like a sore thumb, for me at least in my experience, is that one, I am nothing like my coworkers. It
Right.
is very obvious,
Yeah.
right? Like I stick out like a sore thumb. Most of them are like Harvard graduates, most of them are like MIT graduates, most of them are Stanford graduates. Both of them come from really nice households, big giant houses. I've rented most of my life and like, barely can barely get by. They have all had all of these like really cool experiences. And when they talk about like their experiences with college and like all the partying and all the good times and stuff, they're like, what were you doing? I'm like, oh, I was working, 3 jobs. I was a chef and cleaning out toilets, and you know what I mean? Like I
Right.
have nothing in common with these people.
Right.
But these people idolize this hustle culture that
Yeah.
they are not part of.
Yeah. They have
Right.
no
They
idea.
like, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see hustle culture as the poison that it is. It tricks people into thinking that you have to kill yourself to live decently, and you shouldn't have to. Right. You shouldn't have to work that hard to have a good life. In fact, you should be able to, if you can put food, if you can put vegetables in the dirt and then water them, that's should be the bare minimum of what a good life should be.
Right.
Right? Like that's all you should have to do.
Yeah. And then stand
Like,
around, and if meat walks by to eat some of it, you can kill that meat and then eat that too. Like that's a
if you're inclined, if you're so inclined.
that's a
Yeah.
tight fucking life.
Yeah, exactly. I'm shooting for that.
Yeah, that's the goal. Like I want like 24, 25 acres of decently rural shit where I can like dig a deep enough hole to have like a water thing and then be like, all right, cool.
Mhm.
Let me just like wait for meat to walk by so I can eat it, you know?
I mean, like the kind of life that I fantasize about, right, is like kind of this communal life, big giant, not like a family, because I don't want a family. That sounds horrible. But like just a big group of homies. And I talk about it all the time
Yeah,
in like on Twitter about this concept of the homies. And it's essentially it's like weaponized friendship.
Yeah.
What homieism really is. It's this idea of, hey, look, I'm your friend, and I don't fucking care if you don't want me to be your friend. That's too fucking bad. I'm your friend. We're friends because if we're not friends, we're all gonna die on this spinning rock that's running out of oil, dude. Like you don't have the option.
Yeah.
We don't have the option to be
whether
picky.
you like it or not. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, I see the future, like a perfect future, like a perfectly realized homie future would literally just be like, a little bit more agricultural. We could still have technology. It would make us think, it would automate certain things, make things faster, but with the emphasis on being like self-sustaining, right? So like a self-sustaining neighborhood of people who are on friendly terms with each other. We don't got to be best friends. We don't got to know each other's names. We don't got to know everything. We just got to be homies, right? Like, hey, what's up? How you doing? That's it. That's all I care about.
The chin up. Like that's
the chin nod. If you give me with that, that's it. That's I know.
That's it. Down here in the southeast, like so both my parents were in agriculture in different ways, right? Like so they had like a nursery and landscaping business and stuff like that, right? Like and then they're separated for a long time now, but they're both still agricultural. Like they're both either in landscape or in like my mom's a apiarist, right? Which is like bee person, like she fucks with bees.
Yeah, beekeeping.
Yeah. So like they come out to your way on semi trucks from where she's at down in Florida. Like so she has to like make sure that they're not going to kill the bees that are already out there, you know? So like she makes sure that they're safe and whatever. So but anyway, like that the idea that like we have to grow a certain amount to sell is so crazy. Like it's so much labor for like a single or even like 50 or 100 people to make a living growing food. But then it's like, wait, how much food was grown to make a living? Like, so when you look at the economics of agriculture is so fucking crazy. It's like you fed 7,000 people a day, right? Per day of labor for a person. You're making 7,000 servings of the thing you made, like during the 3 months that you get to pull. And it's like, or whatever the numbers are, it doesn't matter. But it's like, oh, and you're paid how much, right? So those two numbers are so crazy, imbalanced, right? That
well, it's not even taken into account. Like, look,
say what?
It's not even taking into account like just the trappings of capitalism, which is like that. You're losing me. Oh, yeah.
No, I was saying
the amount of work. Oh yeah, the amount of work that you do to make. Let's say you grow enough to feed 100,000 people, right? Food waste itself is like close to like 80%. So of those 100,000 people that you supposedly fed, 20,000 of them actually ate, right? And so that means 80% of your crop is bought and paid for, but ultimately not getting to the people that need it.
Right.
And when you think about it in those terms, it makes even less sense. And I think, like, if you want to talk about like how capitalism works and get like in the weeds about it and like almost esoteric, the whole point and functionality of capitalism isn't to patch these holes that make things like more efficient. That's not what capitalism does
No.
not make things more efficient. It makes things more competitive,
Yeah.
right? And so in competition, it doesn't matter if your food gets to the people who buy it, because that ultimately doesn't matter. In competition, what matters is that you make more and you sell more. So what you're doing is you're extracting this from the earth. You're literally extracting some form of like
Value.
capital, essentially, which is food. Food. It's you're removing some kind of what is it, nutrition from the earth, and instead of getting it to the most amount of people, you're giving it to a very select few amount of people, but you're gaining all of their capital in return. And if you put that money back, what you end up doing is you don't end up feeding more people as you continue like growing your operation. You actually end up feeding less because you're extracting more wealth for
Right.
less, for a smaller amount of the pie, right? Which is like, that's essentially what capitalism, that's the whole functionality and form of capitalism.
Yeah. And
So
so
like,
back to the
it's insane to me that
seemingly innocuous evil of those hustle grind guys. Like even their really
yeah,
simple grift, it's like, so for we didn't like put the nail in the hammer there or whatever, like hammer on the nail there, but
mhm,
the grift for them
mhm,
really is the views and the advertising and that's where they make their money. But that grift
yeah,
that they're displaying, they make 0.07 cents per $10, right? Like they're making so little money on each transaction that they're sending an email for. And what they're showing you is this like hand type thing. So they're making people do this as their side hustle that really pulls that labor out of the actual like gray market economy of side hustles in general or whatever, and just keeps people spinning their hamster wheel, right?
yeah,
Put a
yeah.
nail in
And
that
then you end
coffin.
up,
What's that?
yeah, you end up doing exactly what you end up doing and buying
Yeah,
piecemeal exactly what it is that they do, right?
right.
And then it doesn't work for you for a
No,
multitude of reasons, but the main reason that it won't work for you is that you don't have the safety net for it for you to take the risk that they take
right.
for you to make the same returns. So yeah,
And
they only make 7 cents.
even if you did, right? Even if we flattened wealth generationally right now, but kept the system of capitalism, the mode of production in place, it would be a race to the bottom in terms of who's willing to take the least amount of bullshit off of each little microtransaction between each other, right? So,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
then you have this like chain still from like production to consumer. And the more people are in
mhm,
the middle, or the eventually there's a ton of people in the middle, and they're all just not working, right? So you still have people deciding to do
yeah,
labor, and you have people not deciding but
mhm,
needing the product of the production, and then you have a shitload of
mhm,
people in the middle taking 0.05% here and 5% there and 80% if they can market it,
mhm,
right? So
mhm,
yeah, it's wild how fucking inefficient capitalism is, right? When we talk about
mhm.
like yeah, the nuts and bolts of like efficiency or like yeah, when people like that's the biggest marketing term for capitalism is how fucking efficient it is. But like you said, there's nothing more efficient than pulling something out of the ground, boiling it, and handing it to your homies.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. There's nothing more efficient than literally feeding for your, like, so the whole concept of homieism, right? Like in its form actually. So recently some fucking so I'm in this like really nerdy group chat and we talk about all kinds of stuff. And
Yeah.
someone was like, "Oh, dude, the fucking nerds are like they're coming to reinvent homieism and they're calling it something called like squad economics." Right. And I'm pissed off about that because it's not what it's essentially they're describing what I've been talking about for years at
Right.
this point in my life. But that it's the I guess what is it, the heady way of looking at it. But
Yeah.
essentially there is nothing more to feed yourself, right? To become like literally just for you to become self-sustaining is the most efficient way, like to spread homieism, right? Because once you become self-sufficient, the rest of the homies don't have to actually worry about you. You take care of you. And then once you take care of you, you have the ability to show others how it is that you're taking care of yourself. And other people can either add on that, or they can, maybe some things don't work for them, and they build, and then you end up building this community that's built on self-improvement to the point, not self-improvement to the point of competition, which is what like grifters and like that side, the hustle culture guys, they're trying to become so self-improved that they're no longer human beings, right? They're like just these hustle monsters. And that's not what homieism is all about. The idea is get myself to a state of equilibrium. And then once I'm there, show others how to be equal, right? How to get to that point of like, hey, this is what worked for me. If this works for you, then try it. If not, then it's not what, you know, we'll work something out. We'll figure something else out. But that concept of self-sustaining lifestyle has to really start with you. You personally have to do it. And that's a really big ask, because at the end of the day, the walls of capitalism, like your interaction with it, right? Your daily day-to-day interaction with it do not allow you to become self-sustaining. Like if you have kids, it's illegal for you to turn off your electricity to go off grid.
Yeah.
Legal. If you have kids, it's illegal for you to go drill your own water, because you have to be tapped in, for at least for some counties, you have to be tapped in and paying that water bill whether or not you use it. Right. And, you know, same with like gas lines, things like that. They don't want you to escape this like dependence on their methodologies of extracting wealth.
Yeah.
So if you get away from that, right, then, and this is where I get into like woo territory, because I like a lot of woo people end up like vibing with what I'm saying, and then they were like, but also you should just drink milk from a cow's titty straight and not worry about any kind of anything that'll kill you. I'm like, hey man, you lost me, dude.
Fucking tight, actually.
Yeah, but it's sick that we invented that. Anyways,
so cool.
But I mean, what? Yeah, but what I'm really trying to get at is that like it's a huge ask to ask one person, hey, you have to start taking care of yourself and become self-sustaining. And it's too tall of an ask, in my opinion, right? Yeah. I think that's the amount of money that it takes for you to go, because it's not cheap to go off grid.
Fuck no.
Right? Everyone will tell you, oh, it is. Like, oh, you could just go off grid. Like, no, you can't.
No,
you'll get shot in the woods somewhere, or you'll die of starvation.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't go off grid, but what you can do, right, is start implementing practices in your life of how to go off grid. Not off grid, but like how to become more self-sustaining. First thing I would start with,
like a big one, is like fluffing off or shuffing off, or whatever you want to call it, like the middleman thing, right? So instead of like selling your shit like to like, if there's a thing you're doing as a side hustle, instead of taking something that someone else made and selling it for a profit, make a thing. Like that's an easy one. So like that's the the most shucked off. And then if you're going to sell it, don't sell it to a wholesale market, sell it directly to market, right? So make a thing and then sell it directly to market. And then the way you bill your hours is the amount of hours of labor that went into the thing you made, divided by the number of things you made in those hours. Easy, right?
I mean, that's one way to approach it. My first suggestion that I always tell people is start a garden.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
First thing you can do, start a garden, right? Like the most practical thing, almost everyone has access to dirt, right? If you don't, get a pot, grow some basil in it. Basil is incredibly easy to grow indoors. You grow basil, start cloning basil, and give it to all your friends. It's a great, honestly, an amazingly great gift to just give people is basil, right? Because what happens is, one, it smells, makes the house smell nicer. It's always there. It's pretty much green year round. It's incredibly low maintenance. You just got to trim it every now and then. And you can always clone. It clones really well. You can literally take one basil plant, make 100, and give it to 100 of your best friends. And you've started a homie garden without realizing you've started a homie garden. You are putting people towards that much further into like becoming self-sustaining by literally giving them a plant.
Yeah.
Right. And then, that's one less plant they have to buy from this huge, like giant store that has commodified growing plants. Right. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you can break away from that. Right. And I like, if you know a thing, another way a really great way to do, like, if you know a thing, right? If you know how to do something, next time you hang out with your friends, try and see if you can teach them how to do that thing you know how to do.
Yeah.
Right. And it could be anything, right? It could be something as complicated as coding, or it could be as simple as like, how to do a handstand, right? Like anything that you want to show other people, you're creating this like form, this like what you're doing is you're creating a community, right? And that's what homieism really needs, is
Rock.
community. It needs community to grow.
Pre Ronies, you mentioned handstand. I can't do a handstand because I'm way pull up weighted, so I'm not balanced. I can't. My push force is a lot less than my pull force. I can do hundreds of pull ups a day. I can't do but like 50 push ups, right?
I'm the opposite, the exact opposite, but I get
You're a push, no chin ups. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I moved my chin up bar between my dining room and living room. So like when the boys are over, when the folks are not even boys, like it's everybody. Whoever's over, they just see it right there, and then it's like, yo, hit it. So it's right there in the middle of the house. It's not in my office. It's not hidden. It's just like, yo, this is like a central thing. Let's hit it, right? Like, let's make our back strong. Let's make our arms strong. Right there in the kitchen, like while we're getting fucked up talking about bullshit,
My brother has this is pre-corona. I actually hate that he did it post-corona, but pre-corona, we have this space in our backyard, and it's like, it's all like concreted over, so it's ugly. We can't grow anything there. But what he did was he turned it into an outdoor gym. And we're in California, it doesn't rain that often. Yes, but it's literally open to everyone.
That right.
Like there would be times when he would not be home, like no one would be home.
Yeah.
And he would literally, his homies would just be in the backyard working out fully. And it was cool. It was totally fine.
Yeah,
no one cared. You know why? Because it has two functions, right? One, it's great security.
Yeah, it is.
Right. Nobody ever wants to go into your home.
No.
There's a bunch of dudes working out there, right? Like no one is gonna break into your house.
Not gonna happen.
So, but the problem that I had was like post-corona, he still had people coming over, and I was like, come on, bro. Like, come on, dude.
I will say, if it's outside, it's chill, right? Like, Ronies. I mean, yeah, it sticks on surfaces, blah blah blah. But like, sunlight's the best. Whatever, bleach. What is that? That old
UV.
thing. Yeah, UV is like a badass sanitizing agent. Like, just don't blast sneezes in people's space. Don't shoot snot rockets on my concrete. That would sound tight, man.
Yeah,
that's actually like it's awesome. Like, save the gyms,
Yeah, it's actually really, so it's nice, it's cool. And I think what would end up happening too is sometimes his homies would bring equipment and just leave it.
Yeah.
So like it's self, you know what I mean? And that's self-sustaining. It continues to grow. It continues to get more varied, basically by the more people who use it. And I get really mad and pissed off at like it's a really old like talking point. It's a Republican talking point about like why public works don't work, right? Why public use options don't work.
Yeah.
And what they do is they take a photo of something that's just completely fucking trashed. Yeah. And they say, oh, this is public. This is what a public thing looks like, because people are animals and they will destroy things that they do. And you know what? I half agree, but only here's the thing.
Yeah.
People aren't animals, but people will fuck something up if something is fucked up. Yep. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's right. Window theory. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It is. It's broken. And I don't want to agree with broken windows theory.
And then there is just like all great lies, there has to be a grain of truth. Broken window theory is, so the grain of truth is what you're talking about. If it's fucked up a little bit, people will fuck it up a lot, right? Or won't think to like fix up the little fuck up that they add to a fuck up, right?
But I mean, here's where I get like, where it's not like the government at large in most cities, in most areas, like whether they're metropolitan or even rural, is like cannot find enough money to publicly fix these things, right? And I mean, I swear to God, if any like small town mayor, like if the mayor of Nome, Alaska calls me and is like, I don't have the money, I'm like, bitch, cut your police force, right? First thing, you got you got a giant fucking parasite in your county. Just take a little bit off the top, and make that a public space. And budget a place to clean it up, like budget something.
I had a really good idea for this is before all the like defund stuff was like actually like a popular idea. And I'm an abolitionist, of course, right? Like, obviously, I'm a police abolitionist. I've been a police abolitionist since I knew what policing was, right? So I'm like 12, 13 years old. I know what abolition is. It's not hard to get on board with abolition, but I did know that people are like kind of clinchy in the shorts about it, and they're not down with like the idea of like cutting the budget of police forces. I was like, make them drive buses. Like,
Oh yeah,
instead of
like actual public servants.
Yeah. Like, so they should drive buses, like big ass fucking buses.
And deliver
Like,
mail.
Or how tight would it be for like a major city to be like, oh yeah, in the city we don't allow private use of any vehicle over 2,100 pounds. If you want anything done in a pickup truck, call the cops. And the cops.
Oh, they gotta come. Yeah.
The cops have pickup trucks, right?
Well, that's what I was like trying to explain to somebody. So my brother. I keep going back to my brother, but my brother.
We weren't cutting funding.
Yeah.
We're expanding the role, right? So like, protect and serve. Well, what does serve mean? Here's all these like vestigial things
Services
don't need to own, like a pickup truck, like whatever, right? Like, so private ownership of a pickup truck outside of business would just stop, right? You say like, that's illegal. You get to call the cops and they have the pickup truck. Same idea. But then the cops wouldn't have to carry guns anymore, because I would also do so a strict reading of the Second Amendment says that we have the right to hold and bear arms. Well, it's not a right if I have to pay for one, right? So we would have, you like walk in, show your driver's license, well, not driver, non-driver ID, any photo ID, you get a gun, right? Just period. So everybody's just like, got a gun, period. It would be shit. It would be like a High Point 45 or something. Like, it would be garbage. But you know, everybody's got like the worst 1911 replica you've ever seen in your life, but they have a gun.
Yeah.
Cops don't. They have,
because they're a public servant.
They're public servant. They have a body cam and they drive a bus.
That doesn't sound like a bad future, and I would actually love that. Except like, so I'm not anti-gun. I'm like pro-gun, but I personally don't want a gun. Right?
Yeah.
I actually literally can't own one legally because of I have a predilection of getting real sad sometimes.
Yeah.
That's bad. That's a bad idea for me to just own a gun.
That's the red flag.
I know myself.
Speaking of, like, so that's like in the news this week, Biden was talking about that red flag shit. Like, that's the most ableist fucking shit you've ever seen. It's not just ableist, it's racist too, because the cops aren't going to get involved with it unless you're brown, right?
Yeah.
So like, I mean, there's plenty of people that are like white people that are suicidal ideation, whatever, and have guns their entire lives without ever using them to do anything. But then the moment someone non-white says, you know, something offhand to somebody, you know, they call the cops.
My dad told me something. My dad, up until he went to prison, he had guns, and like his brother owned guns.
Yeah.
And my dad, I remember one time we were driving and we were with his brother, my uncle, and we were driving, and a cop pulls us over and my uncle starts freaking out.
Yeah.
I go, what's wrong? And he's like, there's a shotgun in my trunk. And I'm like, it's legal, right? It's got your name and everything on it. And like, you know, we're literally coming home from like a hunting trip. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then he looks at me and he goes, Mijo, we're too brown for that to even exist. If you're brown and you own a gun, it's already illegal. Right. And I when he said that, it dawned on me, like, you know what? I just don't even need the headache of owning a gun, legally or not legally.
Yeah.
Right. He's right. Whether or not I own it and have the paperwork for it and I did everything I was supposed to do to own it does not matter, because I'm the wrong color to own a gun.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of where I live, you know, in America. So it's just the way it is. And I don't know. I was talking about like going back to like the police and stuff, right? Like, I had this metaphor that because my brother wanted to be a cop, right? But he wanted to be a cop not because he wanted the power, or like in his mind, he had this naive notion that cops save you from bad people, right? And I think that's not I think a lot of people still have that naive notion.
No, I mean, I
right?
saw cop
even despite
yeah,
you know, I think for the most part, people, because we all know not to trust the media. So when the media is telling us that cops kill people, right, if you've already been told not to trust the media, then your first thought is like, no, cops are good people. This is why would they do that? Right. Like, right. So I understand the narrative of why people get fucked up and they get all their minds confused and shit. Right. And it's like, my brother's one of those guys that, that happens to people. Right. He doesn't really pay attention to the news because all the news is bullshit in his mind. So when he sees shit that goes down, and especially when the news really actually started covering police violence, he was like, every time I've ever spoke to a cop, they were nice to me. So I don't know what the fuck is going on. So I had to explain it to him. I said, here, man, this is how you know that the cops aren't your friends. This is a metaphor that I use. I said, look, say you're an old lady with a busted hip and I'm a landlord, right? And I raised the rent on you. I know you can't pay that shit, but I need you out because you can't pay the rent. I need you the fuck out. Yeah. Can I call the cops to come and take you out?
Yes.
And he's like, yeah, that's what cops do. They do evictions. And I said, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Now that's because that cop is protecting my property. I get it, right? He's doing me a service. Now let's flip this around, right? You're the landlord. I'm the old lady. My hip is all busted up. I can't afford the rent. So I need to call someone to help me because I don't have any family. Yeah. I need to call someone to help me move all of my furniture out. And by some grace of God, I found a place to stay or I found someone I can live with, right? But I can't physically move my things from one area to the next. Can I call the police to come and help me out?
No.
Can I call the cops and say, hey, look, I need you to come?
If they
under your
buses and pickup trucks under my system,
they would.
Absolutely could. So vote Fifi for mayor of Hometown. Hey, let me pause for 2 seconds.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So another thing I've been doing to like to your point and to that metaphor, one thing that I've been doing for a couple of years now is just anytime anyone does any actual service in public for me, I say thank you for your service. Mm-hmm. So it's the opposite of thanking like troops.
Yeah.
So it's just like, hey, the bag boy at the grocery store, right? Or like the lady ringing up. I'm just like, thank you for your service. Like a hearty thank you for your service. Where it's like, I'm not taking anything away from the military by doing that. I wish it was, but it's not. But the other thing is like, systemically, or like if enough people start doing that, it would devalue that term eventually. Mean, if you serve a person, thank you for your service. So it's like a little fucking stupid thing I do, but it's very fun to do it because they look at weird too. They're like, my service, like they don't think of it like that. They just think of it like, I'm sure they're thanked like 80% of the time too. Like I've done service jobs and I've been thanked, but it was never like, thank you for your service. Right. But like, pizza delivery, the old trope, pizza delivery drivers are vastly more likely to be murdered during the commission of a crime than a police officer. Right.
Oh yeah. I was literally explaining to, I used to drive for a fucking roadside assistance.
Yeah.
Right. And I also used to do tow truck shit. You would not believe how many times I would show up before the cops.
Yeah.
And how often like I would show up before the cops on a fatality.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not like I show up 5 minutes before the cops. I would show up an hour, 3 hours. The ambulance guy's like, look, that guy in that car is dead and I need to take this guy away, but I would have to wait for the cops. Fat motherfuckers hanging out at Dunkin' Donuts chilling, right? And I'm sitting here traumatized for $7.25 an hour, right? Like that's
not even so. Like the Dunkin', even like the donuts. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, because I was reading a court case about trigger warning, whatever. It was a sexual assault case, and it was a cop, right? So it was like, and then I was like looked into how common that was. And I was like, oh yeah, so say they murder in the range of like 35 to 50,000 Americans a year, right? So that's deaths. I was like, how many sexual assaults are actually prosecuted or even mentioned? It is jaw-dropping, right? Jaw-dropping. It was like the donut thing was almost made up to make them look like fat motherfuckers that just hang out eating donuts. Dude, they're getting domed at gunpoint. all the time. Every cop,
Mhm.
not every cop, but a lot of it's
Yeah,
an insane
like
number of cops.
99%.
Like,
I would, yeah,
yeah, dude, they're raping people in the faces like more than they eat donuts, I would say. Like it
yeah,
was so crazy. Like the and I'm not putting links in the bio either. Do your own research, whatever. Believe me or don't believe me, I don't care. It was buck wild, like buck wild. And back to
less
that,
than
like
less than
hashtag
zero.
save the children too. It
Yeah.
what do you call it? The majority, or not sorry, not the majority. There are court cases where it is admissible into evidence.
Mhm.
Was it Casey? Not Casey. Yeah, Casey Anthony. The Casey Anthony case. In the evidence, it is admitted. It is so understood as fact that it was admissible as evidence.
Mhm.
Uh, just on like what is it in is the not benefit of the doubt. Oh fuck, what's it called in law? They have
In
the
legalese,
yeah
shadow of
in
a doubt.
shadow of a doubt. Yeah, yeah. So it is so much more likely that because she was the child of a law enforcement official that she was touched inappropriately, and in her case, potentially raped and potentially bore the child of her father,
Mhm.
and that the victim of that murder case was the child of that police officer
Mhm.
that very likely did kill that child. Um,
Mhm.
it was admissible into court that like she did do like sorry not that he did it, not that there was proof he did it, but it was so much more likely that she was a rape victim because he was a police officer. Like they are 11 times more likely than the general public to commit sexual assault on a family member under the age
Mhm.
of 18.
Mhm.
Everybody knows
That's a
about
that's
the
I mean
40% thing, right? 40%
yeah.
spouses that have cops as their spouse get beat by them. No, 11 times more likely than the general public to be to commit sexual assault against their children.
Mhm. Yeah, that's I mean, and that's the trappings. Like you want to get into like the psychology of it, why that shit happens, right?
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
myriad of reasons, but one of the main reasons I think, and then like and it goes great into like the whole idea of the great Satan, right? Like your initial concept. The real great Satan isn't so much like the people think that people are garbage, and that shit makes
yeah,
me
yeah.
mad because that's not true.
No,
People are good,
people
right?
fucking talk.
Institutions are garbage.
Yeah,
Yeah, institutions are bad, right? And how do institutions become institutions? They strip away your humanity. They remove your humanity. When you go into prison, you get your name taken from you and you
right.
get assigned a number. And
Yeah,
that same fucking thing happens when you wear a badge. You are no longer, you know, Gary Johnson from fucking, Indiana, or, like Pokenwood, Indiana. You're no longer that guy.
nope.
You are Officer Johnson, and
Yeah,
this is your badge number. And you report to all this shit. And that shit, that daily stress of like, and I'm not sympathetic to the cops. Fuck the cops. But also fuck the institutions that allow the cops to continue to be fucking shitheads.
in
Do
a
you get what
way.
I'm saying?
No, like in a way, what you're saying and what I do believe too, right? I believe this.
Mhm.
I am sympathetic
Mhm.
to the cops when I am an abolitionist. I am sympathetic to
Yeah.
individuals that are also victims of that system, right?
Yeah.
Those,
Yes. And it's a hard line to walk, right? Because
yeah,
people are
yeah,
like, oh, you sound like you're sympathetic for the cops. Like, no, dude, the
no.
world, yeah,
However,
the world
yes,
is,
because I'm saying like they did that thing that they did,
mhm,
but
mhm.
there's a systemic cause uh, that changed that individual and made them more likely to do that thing that they did.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Yeah.
murdering brown people or raping children, both are evil. And I'm not saying that cops should just be allowed to do that or should not be prosecuted for it, right? But it's easier, not just easier, it is better for society to look at the systemic problem than it is to like go through every single cop right this minute and kill the ones that are raping kids,
Yeah.
right? Yes, we should do that too,
Yeah.
but we should fix the problem first.
Well, I mean, and then it expands further out, right? Like the church, right? The Catholic Church,
Yeah,
they have a lot of what is it, rape allegations, among children, and priests, being inappropriate, and then just getting transferred out, like literally no justice. That comes from institutionalization, right? The clericalism, removing, I guess, like when you take someone's humanity and you make them less part of the human race, the homie collective, and you elevate them to a status above, they begin seeing people around them as lesser, right? They don't see themselves as servants or shepherds to a flock. They see themselves as the wolf, right? And that goes even further. Like Mormon church has that exact fucking same, different churches, same fucking problem. What is it? The acting industry, right? Like acting has that same exact problem, because you have these executives who are in power. Even like Silicon Valley has that same Facebook, Google, they all have these fucking problems. And it's because anytime you take a small portion of the general population and you say you are no longer them, they stop seeing themselves as them. One of the reforms, and I'm not a reformist at all. I don't believe in reform. I don't think any reform will work. I think this shit is too far gone. Since I remember I was explaining in a group chat somewhere that in 2015 I said the world is bullshit. In 2015, in 2005, when I was a kid, when I was 15 years old, I said the world is bullshit, the government is bad, and the best thing you can do is just try and be an outlaw, a nonviolent outlaw as much as you can. Right. And I remember saying that at I remember in 2005, I was 15 years old, and the rest of my life has just been vindicated. Right. Just like every year, I've never been more righter in my life. So, but I mean, what I'm really getting at is this idea of like, you should never, if you wanted to start a reform, one of the first ones I would do is that police have to live in the neighborhoods they patrol. First one. Very simple, right? It's because it doesn't remove you from this neighborhood. You're now part of it, right? You have to become part of it. And I think like community policing is something that people talk about all the time, but I think there should be rules around that, because no one ever addresses that in community policing. They're like, oh, we should do community policing where they have to talk to like a group, like a board who decides rules. No, you should literally just have it so that way whoever is taking care of the community in any means has to live in that community, right? They can't come out from outward. It would also solve congestion problems too,
big time.
And industry, like general industry, like trappings, and it would stop the suburbs versus city commutes and shit like that. But I don't know. I think, right, and like the psychology of like anti-humanity, which is like, it's when you stop seeing yourself as a human and start seeing yourself as a tool for an institution. When you start seeing yourself as an administrator, not necessarily a person, right? And I know like a lot of people in administrations, right? Like I feel bad. I have friends that work in like family court, and I have friends that work in like even like hospital administration, like, and they essentially decide who gets to see their kids, who gets to, live on a ventilator and who doesn't, right? Who gets to go home and see their family, and who, like all this really awful, huge, and they make these decisions like that because they're not connected to any of these people. They don't see that it's a person that's struggling to breathe. And I'm sure that some of them do, but if they were to do that all the time, it would fucking kill them, right? They'd fucking put a gun in their mouth, because that's a horrible decision to constantly have to live with. And I understand why they alienate themselves, but that further alienation, that really is like the real insidiousness of capitalism at large, right? Like this, you're getting paid a very small amount of money to make these gigantic decisions, life or death decisions, or huge like life altering decisions for people, and you just have to go home and watch Netflix about it, because that's your only option. It's either that or fucking kill yourself. The only two fucking options you have is
escapism or escapism.
Watch the new Marvel movie, or fucking buy a gun. Those are the only two options you have. Right. And like, as depressing, I think like the cure for that, right, for me has always been putting myself, solidarity, and putting myself in the service of others, right? My homies, my friends, right? Seeing myself as someone else, right? And trying my best to put myself in not just in the position of someone else, but like see myself as that person, even the people that piss me off, right? Even the people that make me angry. Imagining myself as that fucking cop who fucking shot that kid and isn't a racist, but the way the fucking world is and how scary they are and all this bullshit that they let get into their fucking head, and now they gotta live with that shit, and they're fighting for their lives. This is awful. It's awful that all of this has happened, right? That it is, and there's nothing, they can either buy in and say, yeah, I did that shit and I'm proud of it, or they can fucking for the rest of their life, hate it.
Yeah.
So
I think even the ones that's another thing, even the ones that like for the rest of their lives, like, yeah, fuck yeah, I killed him, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's fake, right?
yeah.
They know that's fucking fake. And in their soul, like deep behind that badge, is that fear that they fucking murdered somebody, right? Like that knowledge that they did something unforgivable and fucked up because the systems made them a monster. Like it made them just like the hustle grind guys, right? So we're talking about class traders. You want to talk about class traders? What the fuck is inserting yourself between labor and consumer? Like what is tertiary sector labor in general? What we all are forced to be cops to a degree, right?
Yeah.
So we're not narking on people for the mask slips down on a waitress and we fucking go to right or something like that. We're not all that kind of cop. Like we're not murdering brown kids, but the systems make us all dirty, right?
Yeah, I'm in marketing, man. I'm selling people shit they don't need. I'm making them click buttons for me.
Same idea,
right? Like, yeah, it's awful. Yeah, I feel bad. I feel guilty about it. Right? It's one of the reasons why I fucking, really have to struggle not to eat myself to death and drink. Right? Like it's it's hard.
It is hard.
That's why I think like for me the thing that has really given me hope and given me the ability. That's what I like. I get really mad on like about Twitter leftists, right? Like on Twitter, people on not just Twitter leftists, but people in general, right? When they talk about creating a environment or a system or something like this end all beat all that will just straight up rip the roots out of capitalism, flip it on its head, and establish this anarcho communist future that they believe, or like one of the other two things, right? All kinds of MLs, fucking Maoist, even Trotskys, whatever, they all have this like mentality of what they want in the future, and none of them is addressing the very real reality of what homieism for me does, which is cope. I'm trying to fucking cope with capitalism. I'm not trying to fucking destroy it because I don't know how. I don't think anyone does. But how do you cope with it? How do you try and figure out how to?
I think homieism fits into Maoism, third worldism. I honestly think
it does. I just don't know how.
Like, so I'm fucking stupid too, right? So, but I do think that it absolutely fits into that same ideology, and like, you're not. So they are Western leftists, right? So by Western leftists, what they're doing is they're implementing their lived experience into the theory that they're reading. So they're reading Mao, they're reading maybe even Ho Chi Minh, right? One of the best, right? So Ho Chi Minh fucking rocks. Best Marxist Leninist, Maoist ever, like in my opinion, because the proof is in the pudding. He fucked America off, right? He said, hey, kick rocks, and then America had to kick rocks. So again, it's all about coping and results, and kind of to what we were talking about, like this idea that cops are victims of systemic oppression, but the labor form that they do as tertiary sector labor, as class traders, is valuable to the middle stage of revolution. Anyway, he's a genius. Read Ho Chi Minh. Everybody out there, read Ho Chi Minh. Pay attention to Ho Chi Minh thought. The proof is in the pudding, and also like he makes a lot of sense about the labor forms that are, we would think, vilified and should be vilified by communist theory, but we're not there yet. So what do we do with these people? What do we do with, you don't just vilify these people as fascists and say they're broken forever. No, they're not broken forever. They have guilt about the murders they've committed. They have whatever. And the ones that haven't committed murders yet do have a certain set of skills that are very useful for killing capitalists. So let's maybe know these people.
I've always seen myself more Zapoetic than anything else, right? I don't know if you know about like the EZLN, and like EZLN gets weirdly people are like, oh, they're like an ML group, and fucking weird to think that they're not really anarchists, they're not really communists,
Right.
they are strugglers, and they see
Yeah,
themselves
yeah.
as that. If you ask anyone in
The
the
beauty of
EZLN
ML
or
is that it should encompass all these, though, right? So,
Mhm.
you know,
it doesn't in
focus.
theory.
If we like, if you,
Mhm.
you know, it's like with the moon, right? Or
Mhm.
the
Yeah, yeah.
finger, you point the finger at the sky. If you focus on the finger, right, then you
Mhm.
miss all of the other stuff. Marxist Leninism, especially Maoism, should incorporate these things that you wouldn't go like, that's like us as outsiders of that society or of that group that are
Mhm.
doing revolutionary struggle. We
Mhm.
can't say that they're not Maoists, right?
Mhm.
That's the beauty of Maoism. They decide if they're doing class struggle.
Yeah. Yes.
If they're
Yeah.
doing defense against imperialism, they're Maoists, whether I like it or not. Whether
Mhm.
I think that they're doing it right or not, it's not my place to say, right?
Mhm.
I own the four walls around me. I am
Mhm.
very fucking privileged,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
if I'm looking at somebody that's Argentinian or Brazilian, right, and they're like, they're building fucking ghost guns to shoot the guys that have been cutting their kids' heads off.
Mhm.
They're doing a Maoism whether I like it or not, and I don't care what they
Yeah.
believe. I don't care what slurs they say.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
they're killing people that need to die, then
Mhm.
fucking they're Maoist
So,
and
and
they're
that's
all
what. So the EZLN makes it pretty fucking clear, right? In if you've read like any kind of like, the EZLN's weird. I'm not part of the EZLN, nor would I ever say that I am or even really identify with them. But I do read a lot of like what they write. And one of the first things that I read from them is like they got asked, "Are we leftist?" And they said, "We are strugglers." Their
right.
answer wasn't we aren't leftists, we are strugglers.
Right.
And what that meant was they'd like from the political ideological compass, it does not matter where you are from. If you are struggling against empire, you are struggling,
Yeah.
right? And I think about that all the fucking time, right? And I think about like homieism for me really does mean identifying my homies in the struggle. It from a political standpoint, there are even people that I am friends with and are homies with that have, what people would consider conservative or even like right wing ideas and ideation. And people will be like, dude, fuck that guy, he's a Nazi, or fuck that guy. He's not a literal Nazi, but I mean like
Right,
fuck
right,
that guy.
right.
He's a fascist. He's got like, he's got these fascist mentalities. Like I have friends of mine who are like,
He wakes up and talks about
there's
hustling and grinding.
yeah, yeah. I have friends who are like, there's it's not that we don't have enough food or anything, it's that there's too many people that Malthusian. And I'm like,
Yeah,
hey man,
I was like
you're
that
wrong.
as a kid. I
Yeah.
I totally bought into that.
Yeah, and I get why. I get why, right? And I don't want to exclude these people immediately and be like, you're a fucking stupid
They just
Malthusian
don't know.
dumbass. I'm like,
They
no,
don't
like,
know.
yeah, I'm like, hey, look.
We've been post scarcity for 400 years, but people that are like child free for environmental reasons don't understand that, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then you just explain it to them. You're not saying, "Hey, have kids by force." You're saying,
yeah. If you
"Listen,
want kids, have them.
I'm not calling you racist for not having kids,
Yeah,
or whatever,
yeah,
right? Or saying that there's too many people. You just don't understand, right?
yeah.
And
I'm
let's talk
literally,
about
I'm
it.
anti-natalist, but only for me personally because I don't want kids because
Yeah,
for
me
mental
neither.
health reasons.
Yeah,
Because I've seen how fucked up you can make a kid,
same,
and I don't want that responsibility,
dude,
right? Like that's.
same,
So
dude.
I
Early,
get it.
early on, like, yeah,
Yeah,
the pieces fit together because I was
yeah.
also like, there's too many people. Also, like the fucked up like DNA stew that I am is not making anything fucking wonderful anytime,
Yeah.
no matter what I mean, and like dump these loads into, it's not coming out okay. Like it's just not gonna come out okay. So
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, believe me, I get it. I'm like that's what I mean by like, but for the most part in all the other homeism stuff that I do practice what I preach,
yeah,
right? Which is like for a lot of people they think, and I think that that's really what bothers me about like leftists online, this online leftists is that a lot of people really don't practice what they preach, and that and I think the reason why they don't practice what they preach is because it's fucking impossible for them to do that.
yeah,
Right? It's impossible to be a hard like these hard ass MLs that they claim to be, and then go work for go wait tables, right? And their boss is a fucking grind those grindcore or the grind guys, right? Those like hustle culture dudes. That it's impossible for you to do that and still maintain a job and pay rent. I get it.
Right.
It.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So that's where like homieism fills in the gaps for me, right? Because homieism really just means be my homie, be my friend.
Yeah.
Right. That's the baseline of all of it is, are you my friend?
Yeah.
Yes or no? And then if no, then that's too fucking bad. You're my friend anyways. Right. That's we don't take no for an answer as far as that I'm concerned with like friendship. Right. And sometimes you have to earn someone's trust and be nice and do all kinds of stuff to be that friend. But that's fine, because I think that we're at a point socially, right, in our all of our struggles, in our collective struggles against just colonialism, empire, fucking just data, just getting food on the table. If you're not even worried about any of that, even just fucking paying your car note or paying your rent, all of these things have these horrible consequences that far outweigh what they should. You are struggling. You are in a struggle, right? The only people who aren't struggling on this earth are like the Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, and very few of us are them, right? So a lot of us are fucking struggling. And if you're struggling, then we're already friends. That's the baseline, right? Like if you're already there, we're already homies, right? All the rest of that bullshit that you don't like about me, and then maybe things that I don't like about you, I can overlook them. We have to we have to get together. We don't have the option. We're out of time of getting to pick and choose who our friends are.
Yeah.
Right. Like that. If anything, that's just, we got 40 more years of oil.
Yeah. And we gotta probably wrap up before too long. Has anybody ever like taken this information in from you and mentioned that it is like matriarchally revolutionary, like where it almost is taking like patriarchal ideas about like Western leftism or like whatever academia and like dragging people, whereas like matriarchal conceptions of teaching are that we just violently hug, right? So the like patriarchal violence is like yanking a leash, and then matriarchal violence is like you just hug it out, right? Like just hug it until the thing stops moving and relent.
No, it hasn't. But
right? Like
no one has ever said that to me before. No one has ever said that to me before, but honestly, that's legitimately where I base it off of. What it boils down to is that in my mind, right, love is an actual thing that exists. It's real. Not like love in the sense of other people's think of love. Like I like the Greek concept of love, agape, which is like
brotherly.
Like this love of everything, right? And I think personally, you will never really know that love until you have it removed from you, if that makes any sense. So like I didn't grow up, I wasn't this like, I didn't grow up and turn magically. I didn't make every right decision and end up here.
No.
Right. I ended up here because I was a fucking bully. I was a menace. Right. I at the cost of getting canceled, something that I said a while ago when I was talking to my girlfriend, that like the only thing stopping me from being a school shooter when I was a kid was literally no access to a firearm, because I was that fucked up and angry and pissed off at everyone and I hated everyone. And it wasn't until like I got my size and was able to start being a bully and start being mean and awful, and I got the shit kicked out of me very publicly, and I saw myself as the villain for the first time in my life. And I really got to get to know myself as the bad guy, and that every bad feeling and negative feeling that I had felt was me at myself, right? It was deserved. Every bad thing that happened to me, like, my parents being bad and all, everything awful that ever happened to me growing up, I was deserved because I was such a fucking monster, and I needed to stop being a monster. And then as soon as that clicked in my brain, I realized that like you really do have to love. Like you don't have the option. You either love or you die. You don't. And the only thing that really did save me is love. And I don't mean like love like someone fell in love with me, but I mean like agape. Like strangers were nice to me, and I lived off the kindness of strangers. And that shit, I have to pay that back. Right? I owe that debt.
Yeah, to everybody.
Yeah.
Constantly. Yeah. I love that, man. Dude, you're coming back for sure. Like this was the most fun, and like I've got whatever, tomorrow's my birthday. I made a bunch of steak in the sous vide.
Oh dude, happy birthday.
Hey, appreciate it. So I've got to it's in the ice bath now, so I'm It should be at like a good, whatever temperature it needs to be before we get out of it. But I'm gonna go feed an old lady some food, and myself, of course. It's my birthday, so whatever. But it should be some really fun beef being eaten by all. But no, you're coming back for sure. I love that idea of like this like unrelenting righteous like matriarchal violence, where it's not like violent, like you're not beating the shit out of somebody, but like, man, I'm not going to get the idea out all the way right now because I'm not like a evolutionary anthropologist, but like the domestication of dogs, you know that how that happened, right? There's like multiple theories of it. One was that like they figured out how to tie knots and they tied it in a neck and they carried it around. And the other was just like they picked puppies up that were kind of chill with them, and then they were like loved them, right? So it's just and we see in female chimps in Borneo are using tools to kill bush babies. They have been doing it since 98, 99, somewhere in there first. But they explain to each other how to do it. They've noticed that the childless women are better at it than the ones that have children. Whatever. The point is that hold and hug thing is so fucking natural to humanity, and the idea of like just breaking across these aesthetic cultural barriers, right? Where like the Zapatistas is a great example where it's like, yeah, they're not going to call themselves leftists. They're doing leftism, whether they call it leftism or not. And we don't have to call it leftism to just be homies. So I like that idea. I definitely don't like the idea of the way people keep going like, oh, we don't call it communism, we call it capitalism too. Or like, these things. It's like, I mean, we can be academically honest about what we're trying to do, which is world communism. Right? But the how to get there is valid no matter how you're doing it, because we're all just trying to like, we don't know what size like hole it is, so we just have to carve the peg until it fits.
Well, so two things we will end on, and I want to let you get to your birthday. So the best way to sum it all up is the idea of fuck you, be my friend.
Yeah.
Right? Because current America is fuck you, pay me. I want to change that. Right? It's fuck you, be my friend. That's what I want. Right? I want, you don't have an option, motherfucker. We're friends now. And then I think secondly, for me, the homies is not about obscuring the concept of communism. I'm very much a communist. I very much want to see communism become a thing.
I wanted to make sure to mention that so that you.
But like the reason why I call it homieism and why I don't call it and like that is because it's not a means to establish communism. Homieism is not that. No. It is a means to cope with capitalism, and as it continues to spin out of control, I have a lot of accelerationist friends who are like, just spin that shit, I want it spun the fuck out of it. And they're like, what they're not realizing is that people who are already on the bottom are getting flung the fuck off, right? And they don't have a future. These motherfuckers are sitting around hanging out, eating, making NFTs and shit and fucking eating off cryptocurrency gains. That's not the regular guy, right? That guy is not living his life. He's dying.
Yep.
He has no options. There should be something for him.
Yeah.
That's where homieism comes in. That's where homieism is all about. It's coping.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, coping.
It doesn't have to be like planting a garden. It could just be like, yo, get 20, 30 people together and have a dinner party.
Yes, that's homieism right there.
I know COVID has kind of like put a damper on homieism. It's put a damper on what I understand to be my homieism praxis. So, I can't wait to get that second shot, get that full 5G, get like fully a-spectrumed up the rest of the way, I'm looking forward to it. No, we're for sure you're coming back on. I don't know. We'll get schedule wise, like a time when I don't have shit to do that night or whatever. But let's party down some more.
Sounds good.
We had a bunch
and also you can I have a podcast as well too.
Nice.
It's totally free form. It's called The Ain't Shit Show. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that shit. Phil, you have an open invite anytime you feel like, just even if you just want to talk for an hour, hit me up, man. We'll start it up. We'll fire it up right then and there.
Fuck yeah, let's do it. And I'll put links to shit in the bio. Just shoot me like DMs in Twitter, whatever.
Yeah.
And this'll export and be out probably by the time I get home from dinner.
Sounds good, man.
Holla at you. Thanks again. And this has been episode 41 of The Great Satan. Links will be in the bio.